two, and one. Two very simple questions that are the most important in this debate. One, can US aid still work? Is it still something that the US is able to do well? Is it within the proximate interest of the American people to want to continue? Number two, where are US aid affected countries better? A world with US aid, a world without US aid. These two questions act as the driving force towards my partner's extension because it is able to solve a lot of the deadlocks and confusion that exist both on opening bench and closing government. Let's first talk about US aid in the context of OG, because what we hear from them is that US aid is an absolute good insofar as it is the best possible way of attaining global order, global peace, and global growth and development. Problems with this. The first problem I have is to question the US's own capacity and incentive in order to do US aid justice. Note that this is something massive that Joseph is able to nuance and ground for the following reasons. The first and most obvious thing that Joseph exclusively says on CO is that the US literally has other stuff they care about. They do not care about helping other countries, especially since Trump is isolationist. Since Trump is more proximately going to care about things happening inside his own country, like the LA wildfires, like the riots in ICE in California, the point is the dissolution of ICE or the dissolution of US aid is a systematic move that shows what Trump cares about. They do not care about the super powerhouse argument and optics coming from Prime Minister. The second thing is that they literally just are incapable of doing it well to the same extent that they have done it in the past. This is because of the literal implementation of the Department of Government Efficiency by Elon Musk that literally explained the need for the dissolution of US aid to cut down on the exorbitant and exuberant amount of spending that has existed, that has come back to bite them in the ass. That's what Joseph said. What do these two mechs do for the round? How should you weigh it? It proves, number one, why the US is likely to not be interested in doing US aid well. So that really takes out the crux and premise of PM, MG, and government whip. Because in order for their case to work, they first have to prove why absent this dissolution, it is likely for the US to commit the same budget and more importantly, the same quality. They haven't. Closing government hasn't as well. By virtue of this being said exclusively by CO, I think this has to be credited towards us. The second way to weigh it is on effectivity. OG is not able to prove efficiently outside of assertions for things that they are likely to do. Because even if DPM is correct and they'll aid stuff in Ukraine, aid stuff in Israel, or continue to help in Africa, this is very likely to fail at the point in which the US is already stretched thin. That is why they cut spending. OG doesn't tackle on this. Thirdly, note, because the same way this is an effective response on opening government, it also works on closing government. I think every speaker on Gov forgets why US aid was cut down to begin with. It wasn't cut just for some random reason, right? Their inability to integrate that within their frame makes them significantly less persuasive. Secondly, it is only on Joseph where we point out the inherent contradiction that OG has. Because let's be clear, their side is unable to attain the benefits of other countries like China, like India, like any other growing superpower from actually stepping in and establishing more diplomatic connections and partnerships. Note that this works equally well as weighing material that can take us over opening opposition, because the impact we give to you is not just to be reliant on one singular country or one singular organization to help in the development of these countries. You literally make development multipolar at the point in which these countries are now emboldened and forced to help themselves. Again, this isn't an actor motion for the United States. It's for the entire world. Joseph gives clarity as to why Gov cannot have their cake and eat it too. Secondly, let's talk about the insufficient extension coming from closing government. The main thing that MG brings forth in this debate is that the US helps a lot of these developing countries. Absent the US, these countries are likely to turn towards China, towards BRICS. This is the similar point I just talked about. The first call out I have against them is a simple question. Why is it bad? Government teams don't prove why China is bad, why India is bad. I literally have zero clue why they hate BRICS countries so much and favor the US. Like, the end objective is in aiding countries. It doesn't particularly matter who it comes from then. In fact, they're literally equally symmetrical because US probably bombed a lot of children in Syria. China probably has a lot of child workers in Somalia. If we're talking about states, CG has no moral high ground to stand on who is a better actor. But let's be charitable. The exclusive thing our side has that they don't is more options and more autonomy. Gov is reliant on US and US alone. CO gives two major alternatives. The first is to get from other nation states. Maybe you credit this to opening opposition. Sure, we don't even have to take that first point. The second point is on internal and external pressure. This was said in Joseph's 6-minute. Gov Whip had every opportunity to respond to it. They didn't. Why then was that second point round winning? Because it gives an outcome independent way for countries on our side to be able to help themselves. This is particularly important because it solves a lot of the dependency that CG seems to depend on and OG is reliant on. Before I give as to why we outweigh our opening, I'll take the POI now, CG preferably.
Right. So we don't think that the aid that you get from other countries comparatively to the United States are sufficient for these countries to, as you could quote unquote, to help themselves. They can't help themselves in the first place, which is why they're largely relying on the United States.
I mean, yeah, but the thing is, right, like it doesn't necessarily just have to be about that because we have a two-pronged approach that comes from CO. It's like a matter of, yeah, having more opportunities for other countries to deal with, but at the same time, it's an internal pressure for the country to not be lazy as to what has happened in the past, as to the examples that Joseph gave, as to why it's not likely for the countries to help themselves if they know that the US is just going to bail them out again. Last, let's talk about the breadth of analysis that is able to extend upon our opening and win the round. The extent of opening opposition is they say that there are other alternatives like the UN, like third-party organizations helping in countries, e.g. the IMF. Look, that's fine, that's probably true, but that's not the big impact that Joseph is hinting on. The big impact that Joseph is hinting on is how the massive opportunity is for all of the development of these countries to be less reliant on third-party organizations. Why is his MEX more important and why does it weigh heavier in the round? The first metric we win on is just on autonomy. Like literally, our side is better at explaining why these countries are pressured to act and act well outside of whoever is helping them. All other teams in this round ground their analysis on dependency towards a power, we show exclusivity. The second is just on flexibility, which is just better able to outweigh over government world exclusively because they die on the hill that US aid is the only option. We on closing opposition have proved why it's not. For all of those reasons, clear closing opposition.